Shalom. Right now, we're at the Kyiv Jewish Messianic Retreat, and I want to tell you a story that also started at a retreat. From the very beginning, in 2021, when it became clear that I was pregnant, the doctor started telling me that something wasn't right. We changed several doctors before I finally realized this one. She's the doctor who really cares about me and my baby. Several doctors right away told me that something was wrong and that I should think about having an abortion. I said that can't even be a conversation because we're believers. She said, "Okay, I understand. I won't bring that up again." And about a month later, I started bleeding. I called her immediately and she said, "Well, don't be upset, but I told you something wasn't right. Your body is trying to reject the fetus." And I told her, "We will fight till the end." Honestly, I was terrified because in 2018, we had lost our first child in almost the exact same way. To say that fear gripped me, that's an understatement. At that very moment when the bleeding started, I was on the phone with my leader, and she immediately began calling all the intercessors in different prayer chats, asking everyone to pray. My doctor told me to get to the nearest prenatal clinic right away, to check in and get admitted. We went there. Actually, there was one just across the street. But interestingly, they didn't take me in because I wasn't officially registered in Kyiv. My paperwork was from the other side of the city. What amazed me was how God moved in my doctor's heart. Over the phone, she did everything she could to save the pregnancy. She told me exactly what to do, what to take, and even arranged for the prescription medicines to be given to me without the actual prescription, so I wouldn't have to run around the city. 2 days later, I came in for an ultrasound. She looked at me and she said, "Everything's fine. The baby is alive. The heart is beating. We're still fighting for this child." She told me, "You must stay in bed for at least a month and a half. Better 2. No standing, no lifting, no trips. Eat lying down, everything lying down." So that's what I started doing. And a week later, the war began. We didn't understand what was happening, so my husband and I prayed and decided to leave Kyiv just to save the baby. And suddenly, I had to do everything I wasn't supposed to do. Getting up, bending down, packing, lifting. We left for my parents' place in Khmelnytskyi. Normally, that trip takes about 4 hours, but it became a 16-hour trip. We drove through fields, unknown roads, because whoever was leaving back then remembers what it was like. The whole western Ukraine was one huge traffic jam. We arrived late at night between Thursday and Friday. That night, I had terrible pain in my lower abdomen. On Friday, no doctor wanted to see me. People didn't know what to do. Everything was chaos. So we just prayed fervently the whole weekend because we didn't know if the baby was alive or not. On Monday, I finally saw a doctor and he said, "Just slight uterine tension. Take some no spa." And I just burst out in joy because I realized this was a real miracle. God had saved our child. I had been walking, sitting, moving, doing everything I wasn't supposed to do, and still the baby was alive. It was another miracle, pure grace. Later, when they started doing different tests, most of them were good, but a couple of genetic tests came back bad. Actually, 2 times. One doctor even said, "These results are so strange. I don't even know how to comment on them or what they mean." And every time we had a scheduled ultrasound, They measure the baby's arms, legs, everything. They tell us something different each time. The first time, the baby has very broad shoulders, but short legs. The second time, the head is big, but the shoulders are small. Every time, something was off, some kind of imbalance. From the beginning, my leader told me, you need to reach out to our prayer girls. They already have experience interceding for babies in similar situations. So I called her and I said, Alina, I need you and the girls. And every time something happened after another ultrasound, I'd call or text, Alina. And those girls, they literally shook the heavens and pulled them down to earth. That's 100% true. Honestly, so many people were praying for Lev in different countries. Even now, I still find out about people I never knew. Through someone else, they send greetings or ask how Lev is doing. And I realized, they were praying too. In Argentina they prayed. In South Africa they prayed. Places I didn't even know how they'd ever heard about us. So every time, genetics. Finally, I said, we're not doing any more tests. We trust God, and we're going to keep praying for our baby's full health. And when those genetic tests started, I suddenly remembered how I had written a prayer note at a retreat for a child. And I surprised myself because I had written, may the Lord bless us with a child who will be physically and mentally healthy. I'd never really thought that way before. I just wanted a baby. But it's like God already knew how to lead that prayer exactly the way it needed to be. Then at some point, they diagnosed me with gestational diabetes, pregnancy diabetes. It's not so dangerous for the mother, but it can seriously affect the baby. So I had a new doctor by then, since we were in another city, and she started again with that same talk. Well, it's not too late. You could still... I said, pregnant women shouldn't be stressed. Let's just end this conversation right here. She said, okay, I understand. I told her briefly about my doctor in Kyiv and how she had accepted my position and said she'd fight for the baby with me till the end. And the new doctor smiled and said, I really like that attitude. God gave me another doctor, but with the same heart. We prayed a lot that I wouldn't be put on insulin because it's hard to come off of and it affects both mom and baby. And by God's mercy, they told me that a strict diet would be enough. So I followed that diet carefully. At the same time, our Rabbi Boris Salovich was returning from Europe to Kyiv, passing through Khmelnytskyi. So we had the chance to meet him. I told him briefly about the whole story, and he prayed. Not even specifically for me or the baby, but for God's solutions that go beyond human understanding. Then, at about 34 weeks, almost at the very end of my pregnancy, I began bleeding and it happened again in another city, Kamyanets-Podilsky, where we had gone for evangelistic outreach. They immediately admitted me to the hospital for observation. They did an ultrasound and the doctor said, "You've started labor. Your cervix is opening." And I said, "But it's way too early. It's not time to give birth yet." She said, "Yes, it's too early, so we're going to start IV therapy to stop it." So I was there for 4 days getting IVs, lying in bed. Then they sent me for another ultrasound, and the doctor said, "Oh, you have a beautiful curly-haired boy." I said, "Wait, you can already see that?" And she said, "Yes, curly hair." I laughed and said, "Well, that's great, but what about the bleeding?" and she looked closely and said, "Honestly, I don't understand where the bleeding even came from. Everything looks perfect. There's no trace of any problem." And of course, I was like, "Alina," calling my prayer friend right away. They discharged me and we went back to Khmelnytskyi. After that, I was extra careful, took it easy, and everything remained stable. Eventually, the doctors decided I needed a planned C-section. That wasn't really up for discussion because they found a cyst near my lower spine. 4 different doctors told me, "We're not sure how that cyst will behave during natural labor. It's too risky." So we agreed on a C-section. During the pregnancy, we had been praying and thinking about what name to give our baby because honestly, my pregnancy was very challenging. And one day this name came to me, Lev, which means lion in Hebrew. I told my husband and he said, "Let's pray more about it." But for me, it was already Yovik, little lion. And in time, my husband agreed that was his name. So Lev was born. Right after the birth, the medical team came into my room with a long list of tests because of my whole pregnancy history. They said there are 8 tests we do for every newborn, but there are another 20-something that we'll do just for your baby. And I thought, where are they going to get that much blood from such a tiny baby? He was only about 3 kilos, around 6.5 pounds. They pricked all his little toes to get enough blood for those tests. His toes were all blue, poor little thing. And then came the funniest moment. I was still under anesthesia from the C-section, half conscious, my mind foggy. The doctor held him up and said, 5 fingers on each hand, 5 on each foot. And in my foggy brain, I thought, oh no, 5 fingers. Is that good or bad? What does that mean? I was so confused. Then I passed out again. When I woke up, the doctor came and said, "Don't worry, all proportions are perfect, as if nothing in your history ever happened." And I remember thinking, wait, what does she mean, as if nothing happened? Isn't that how it's supposed to be? Then I started recalling everything we'd been through and realized maybe she didn't need to say it more for herself than for me. They ran all those extra tests, and not a single negative result came back. Not one. The worst thing we had was mild jaundice, which was gone in a week. Lev was born beautiful. You know how some babies come out red, swollen, bruised? Not him. He looked perfect. He was like after 2 weeks, all the swelling had gone and the light just came back into him. I took pictures and sent them to everyone, and people said, "When did you give birth?" I said, "Just now." They said, "How is he already so clean and perfect?" And I said, "That's what God did." And now, look at him. Lev will turn 3 years old in a month. All those diagnoses they warned us might appear in the first 3 years, none of them came. His immunity is strong, his development is right on track, and those beautiful curls still there. That's our Lev, and his name, it's not just a name.